Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Cameron Casoglis from the Sport Coaching Leadership Program here at Drexel University, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's webinar with Dr. Ken Murczek. We're talking about coach wellness and all burnout, and the strategies and approaches to what is probably more timely now, Ken, than when you finished up doing your research a year ago. So just before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that we've got a double header next Monday. There's a little typo there, but at noon Eastern next week, we'll have my dear friend Sarah McQuaid, who's based out of the UK, does a lot of work with national governing bodies and sport organizations around the US, looking at how we can get better at getting better. And then Caleb Mezzi, one of our doc students here at the Drexel EDD program, is going to talk about the holistic approach to today's baseball players and transitioning out of baseball. Both very timely topics, but none more timely than this one on how we manage ourselves as coaches. And I know there's a bunch of people online who actually work with coaching staff. So Ken, there's coaches at the high school level, majority at the collegiate level, looking at how we manage our work ethic, and the good old fashioned is more better. Some resources that I know you're going to share, and some samples of routines of things that you've tried and tested and worked, and other things that haven't worked. And I know there's some San Diego people on the call. So I just wanted to say welcome, and knowing that you were in San Diego and now up in Oregon. So welcome, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Well, thanks for having me, and some old Aztecs there. Hello, thanks for joining. And we obviously have been coaching a long time because neither of us have any hair. So
that's true.
I guess I'm probably not a good person to be given this discussion if I lost it all coaching. So, first off, thanks for having me, and everybody that's on the call here today. To me, it shows that you want to continue learning and trying to get better at your craft, which is really exciting, and it's something that I always have tried to do and value in other people. So I appreciate your time and energy, and I always try to take something away from when I have something like this, an experience like this, to interact, and hopefully I can give you a tool or two. But once I dig into things, you'll see that there is nothing more individualized than this topic, because it's about you. You have to figure out how you're going to deal with this burnout or stress or emotional exhaustion or any of these kind of key terms that we'll get into today. But I'd like to just open it up with what's happening in the world today. And obviously, if anybody's in higher ed, which just based on the information I've received, all of us are in some type of education realm, and as you mentioned, either in high school or college, and our world's going to continue to change, and probably for the worse before it gets better. And I would be very interested in some of the strategies that some of you are using currently with your either athletes, or if you're an administrator with your coaches. And obviously I know we have some representation from athletic training, of what you're doing. And I understand I've worked at every level minus Division III. So I've been at the junior college level, I've been at the high school level, I've been at the club level, I've been at the Division I level, I've been at the Division II level. And I know just what's even going on, that there are some parameters that the NCAA is limiting, with time and stuff. I'm currently at an NAIA school, and we've got practice today at 5 o'clock. I'll run a Zoom workout for my team, and I'd be very interested before I kind of unfold what I'm doing. And again, I'm throwing stuff against the wall every week trying to figure it out. I'd be really interested if some other people might want to chime in with what they're currently doing.
And anyway, you can do that by the chat function there. You can just type anything, any comments you have down there in terms of what you're dealing with right now. Because I think that's, Ken, as we talked about, in the prep for this, how there are just so many things that have changed for all of us, stating the obvious, of course, but just in terms of staying connected with your athletes. So how have you managed that at this point? What have been some of the challenges and things that you've found that have worked with this sort of new norm?
Yeah, the new norm, even what we're doing right now, this new virtual world, if you will, that, people a lot older than us, have now figured out how to Zoom. And, I think it's going to open up some really, interesting doors moving forward. I have always joked about trying to live on the road and be able to coach. And I know when I was a student athlete at San Diego State, there was a gentleman that's a big name in the sports psych realm, Dr. Brent Rushall from Australia. And he, over 20 years ago, was virtually coaching the Australian women's swimming team. And, that had always set in my head, because here he's watching a screen and he's, giving feedback. And I was like, how in the world are we going to, when are we going to be able to virtually coach and, live anywhere we want, still do our job? And it's crazy that, here we are today trying to figure that out. And I took a job starting on April 1st, so I still haven't met any of my athletes in person, which is, really kind of different for me, different than anything I've done in the last, 19 years of doing this profession. But what I've tried to do is create a routine. I've noticed that athletes, I think, like routines. I know as a coach, I like a routine of what we're going to do. It's probably why a lot of teams practice at a certain time. Some of that's obviously dictated by class schedule. But what I've done is I've created a weekly routine for us. So Mondays at 5 o'clock, we get on a Zoom call, and I take us through 10 exercises. I do 5 core exercises and then 5 either upper or lower body, and I alternate them. And we go a minute for each exercise, 10 exercises. So it's about a 10-minute block. And then we get 2 minutes off, we grab a drink. Then we do it again. We repeat, and we do that 3 times. So it's basically, about a 30-ish minute workout that I take them through, and I'll be demoing or trying to give feedback, or I'll jump in with them and do some of it with them. And we do that on Mondays. On Tuesdays, I have a rotating accountability partner, we call it, that they jump up with or jump in a Zoom call with, or a lot of them all have iPhones, so they all FaceTime. And I send them a YouTube link that changes every week with a different workout, maybe 20 to 30-ish minutes. And they do the workout together that they're watching. And then immediately after that, volleyball is broken into basically 4 different positions. There's setters, there's back row players, there's outside hitters or pin attackers, and middle players. And I've created 5 exercises every 2 weeks that rotate for the position players to get a workout. So they do 5 exercises for 1 minute each. They go through it 3 times for their position specific. And then there's a little sprinting that they do. So that's about an hour that they do on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, we have a team meeting at 6 p.m. and I'll send them typically a reading or a video of something to watch to prepare. And then I send them an agenda before we get there, so they know what we're going to do. And Zoom, I'm continuing. Today, I got this cool background of that's right here down from our campus. I'm continuing to evolve with this. I found out that you can put them in breakout rooms 2 weeks ago, and it can be anonymous or it's random that they throw them in there, which, is kind of fun, because I was trying to put them all by positions and years. And so that's been really neat. So they'll do some kind of group discussion. And then Thursday, we do what we did on Monday that I run. And then Friday, they're with their partner. And then Saturday, Sunday off. So again, I don't think the best thing, but it's been fascinating that they will text me on the phone some clips of them doing the volleyball specific stuff. And I really feel like it's been, pretty neat. I always start with something positive. Hey, that looks great. I'd encourage you to try blah, 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 getting your arms further back on your approach to using the jump or whatever it is. And it's been interesting because not every kid has been very diligent about getting to me with the text messaging or video. And it's something that I'm not really pressing a lot, but I'm making a mental note that when hopefully we do get in the gym and I meet these girls, that I'm going, no wonder why that kid probably wasn't sending me very much. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to kind of see how that works. But and some kids have been on it. I mean, every week it's religious. I mean, there's 5 of them that I can name right off the top of my head. Every week they send me something to get some feedback, which has been really neat. So you want to jump over? It looks like we got 2 questions in there.
Yeah, no, Justin's made a really good point. He's a strength and conditioning coach and sends out workouts new workouts every couple of weeks. They use Zoom once a week just to check in with the coaching staff and the team, and available to answer athletes' questions over email and social media. But they're not allowed to lead physical activity over Zoom because of the NCAA rules. And so that connection that you're speaking of, Ken, I think that's really what's driving a lot of this, navigating the technology. So whether it's text messages or Zoom or whatever. And then Christina is an athletic director in a small private school. And they're doing weekly athlete leadership meetings. Anyone between grades 9 and 12. And their 4 sport coaches are starting to do virtual gym, open virtual gyms in June. So holding out for hope that we can have a full season. And Christina, we are all in the same literal and figurative boat there, I think, trying to wait for that one. And then Haley mentioned that we're currently waiting for our academic finals to finish up so that we can begin utilizing is it CARA hours? I'm not sure what that is. We have been using our CARA hours to focus on culture, personnel, and career development in weekly team meetings. So thank you for those shares, and any other comments, please feel free to add those. So yeah, Ken, it runs the interesting gamut, but I think, as we talked about, there's no end in sight here. I heard today that Major League Baseball may actually be coming back in July, which to me is really quite astounding. But for all of us, how are we managing this uncertainty is, as you say, it's not a one size fits all, is it?
Yeah, and just a couple things that I've heard that I really like is several people have mentioned about what a great opportunity for us in this profession as people that are leading others, especially the coaches or the athletic directors. Christina, it looks like, is an athletic director, to do some self-reflecting and professional development for ourselves. We have a little bit more time probably than the normal demand that we would be in the office, especially if we're working remotely, to try to better ourselves and better our craft. And I know I've, tuned into more podcasts and coaching videos, in the last month than I have in a long time, which, I think I feel like, boy, I've got some good new ideas that I want to try out. And, I hope everybody, will be able to take that same kind of, again, turning this into maybe a little bit of a positive for us, instead of, because it doesn't look bright. Let's be honest, the future. And I know the NCAA came out with something yesterday, and, kind of talking about fall sports, and, they're not painting this big rosy picture that, hey, we're going to be back at it tomorrow. Obviously, I don't know, being in the Mountain West for 3 years, I'm pretty tight with, the staff at Boise State. And, I checked in with him 2 weeks ago. They furloughed their whole athletic department until, I believe, August 1st. So, and I think that's the trend, of what we're going to see moving forward. I got an email literally right before I got on this call that they'll release on Monday that our department and whole school will go on a 20% furlough. So I think that's, where the wave of everything's going to go, which is, that's a little daunting, and especially financially, it's going to make an impact on a lot of things, but it's reality. One other thing I want to jump in with this, that it makes my brain think a little bit about this, is, as we're trying to get better, what else are we doing? And I stole an idea from our team. Our basketball team is doing free online basketball clinics for people in the community. And I was like, what an awesome idea. So starting next Tuesday, I'm going to do a 3-week series of 20-minute volleyball clinics that are free, that they can log into. And as long as they have a ball, I'll take them through. And I thought, hey, this is a good opportunity for me to take advantage of, A, introducing myself to a new community, B, getting some PR time for my girls with players, and there's a big club here in town that we'll now, you know, be able to interact with. And then the YMCA has a youth development. They've got, I heard, about 225 kids in. So I'm like, wow, this will be awesome, because obviously I contacted them and asked if they would, you know, distribute the link. So again, I think, you know, just trying to be creative and trying to come out of this thing where, you know, hopefully we all get better because of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is an opportunity, but as you say, you know, I think the dark picture that's being painted is sort of, it's building. And so in terms of, you know, some strategies to deal with, you know, particularly the work ethic, I know, I mean, I'm in one category of folks that I feel like I'm busier now than ever before. It's like I can't hide on a plane that's traveling from one side of the country to the other. I can't hide in a meeting to say, you know, I'm busy. I can't answer emails, and, you know, the sort of out of work message of, you know, I'm away from my desk. It just doesn't exist. So, you know, can we talk a little bit about, you know, just strategies that you think, like concrete things that we can talk about what to do?
Yeah. And you know, that's a good segue, kind of leading into what I ended up doing my dissertation on. You know, I was in a pretty weird place. I went back to school, and you know, this thing took 5 years to complete, and I didn't go in knowing what I wanted to do, which, as I look back, a lot of people that were in the program, and even people that are in this, you know, listening right now, it's such an advantage, in my opinion, if you know what you want to do your research on, because now every class that you take, whatever papers you have to do or readings, it's all pointing in one direction. And, you know, I thought just being a coach, oh, hey, I'll, you know, probably want to do something with sports psych, maybe visualization, or, you know, mental skills training or something along those lines, because I had a lot of interest in that. But what really tipped it off, you know, about a year and a half left in my program, when it was time to start, you know, getting some things done. And we were going to have to do an oral defense. I mean, just the whole thing is, you know, packing up like, hey, what are you going to do? I had seen an article by Urban Meyer called The Lone Wolf that ESPN did. And they did a 13-page article on Urban Meyer. And he just totally unloaded about his mental health. And then it stemmed into, hey, I'm going to go completely transparent about what I've been doing. And he was chasing an Ambien, a beer every night to try to fall asleep. It went up to 2. He obviously had some major heart issues. He had some, I mean, physiological complications. And what's so ironic is his wife is a mental health professional. And it opened up my eyes to going, okay, what is out there for coaches? And there isn't really anything, you know. And in my experience in college athletics, especially at the Division I level, if the coach is not being successful, the formula that's currently used is you replace him or her. And that just, you know, to me, that's wrong. And what I ended up doing in my study was I cited several examples of this happening, for example, and especially at the football and basketball level where the money is significant. But they were investing so much money in paying that coach out and a new coach. And even look, they just fired Wake Forest's, you know, Danny Manning's basketball coach. They own $15 million. And now they're going to bring in this new coach from East Tennessee State, and he's probably not making $100,000. And why wouldn't they have maybe, and this was my suggestion, and even when I was fortunate enough to present at San Diego State, you know, just to the administration, I had said, why wouldn't you invest in that person that you have to pay anyways, and put a 1 month, a 3 month, a 6 month, a 9 month, a 12-month plan together and work with them, and maybe try to give them some resources about what they can do. How do we help you decrease your stress? How do we help you? You know the X's and O's, but to me, it's a people's business. And, you know, coaches are going to put stress on themselves as it is. You know, we're in a results-oriented business. It's one thing I've always talked about to athletes is one of the worst things about this job is people will go online immediately after we play, and all they'll see is if we won or lost. And then they move on, and they formulate, oh wow, they must have played like crap, and they have no idea what happened leading up to that. So for example, that we had a practice that night before on the road, and a girl that couldn't do something, maybe her approach had been, we've been working on it for 3 months, and she finally got it, and we had a great practice, and we went for ice cream, or we did something really fun on the road, or a girl was laughing so hard that stuff came out of her nose. And I mean, we had a really great experience, but nobody knows that because you're just based on the results. That's kind of our job. But to your question about what we can do, one thing that I've and when I presented at the AVCA, which is the American Volleyball Coaches Association, which is our big governing body for volleyball, was I really preached when I was able to present about breathing. It's something that's free. There is all kinds of research to support that if you can just take, for example, 15 seconds and just focus on, 5 seconds of inhaling through your nose, holding it for 5 seconds, and exhaling for 5 seconds. And if you do that 3 times, for example, which would be 45 seconds total, the amount of benefit that your body physiologically benefits from something like that is incredible. And that's something that I've really tried to put into my day, put into my coaching, because it's something that I can do on the bench. I gave a lot of examples about, especially maybe if you're not the head coach or you're not in charge of your own schedule, go to the bathroom. You've got to figure out a way to break up your day and your stress. And obviously in the workplace, to me is, one of the biggest areas where obviously you feel it. Well, you have to figure out, what you need to do. How to help yourself. And, I'll give an example here of, I write out, what I'm going to do for that next day. So for me, having a schedule, an agenda, a plan of attack, and building in time for myself was extremely helpful. And now it's part of my day. I either scratch it off or I don't. Before I train my team today at 5 o'clock, I've got a 30-minute jog down my street and back planned. That's my 30 minutes for the day. I'm going to do that for me. I've been looking forward to it all day. I almost did it before this, just so I could shower and then, but I was like, no, just wait. My wife wanted to go too. And I'm like, okay. And, I think just little battles like that, to me, that you make time for yourself. And that also is supported by the research. That's going to decrease your stress. And I think that's really critical. It took me a lot of experimenting, especially while I was doing my research of what worked for me. And I was very fortunate that, I was living in San Diego. I was living in a beautiful place. But I had found some other knuckleheads like myself that would wake up at 6 and we'd meet at the beach and we'd play some beach volleyball. And I'd bring my hand paddle and my fins, and I'd jump in the water immediately afterwards for maybe 5 minutes because it's so cold. And then I'd go home in our apartment complex that we lived in a hot tub, and I'd jump in there, and then my wife and I would eat breakfast. And by 8:40 in the morning, or maybe 8:30, I was in such, I could almost tackle, I could work with Sergio and Queenie and all these people every day that they're wonderful, by the way. But I'd be in such a good state when I'd walk into San Diego State, for example, that, it didn't really, there were things that, in the past, I think would absolutely drive me insane, that, I was able to go, hey, what'd you do already today? I was in such a good state. And I would really encourage, I think everybody has, they know what makes them tick and they know what they enjoy. And even moving here, this isn't San Diego. And I'm trying to, figure out what I'm going to look forward to every day. And we're fortunate that there's a nice big, literally right around the corner from where we're staying here, a big park, kind of a half of a mountain. I think heard it was an old zoo. And there's deer up there, and there's mountain bike trails and hiking trails, and my wife and I take the dog literally every night up there. And, I look forward to decompressing. And I think everybody needs to do that. I would really encourage that. The other piece that I found was Friday night, a buddy would let my wife in hot yoga in San Diego. And he'd crack the back door, and luckily it was a guy I played with in the mornings, beach volleyball, and we'd jump in. And that was just, so therapeutic. And trust me, I'm not a flexible guy. It's so hard for me to concentrate on my breath and just let go. But it gave me an hour every week that we were in town that I didn't have my phone. I didn't have anything else except sweat and a mat. And I could grind all I want, but I knew I wouldn't get the benefit as much if I was grinding the whole time. And again, that's something that I had to experiment with. And I think that I would encourage everybody, to even write down some things that they may find that would be really helpful or beneficial for them.
Yeah. So any suggestions, please feel free to share them at the bottom there. I think Ken, one of the interesting questions that came in was, how do you balance this desire to be great? You've got expectations from your higher ups, your athletic director, the athletic department, your peers, your reputation, and then knowing that you're constantly setting the bar and being a role model. But then there's that time to, like you say, even if it's simple as 45 seconds, take 3 deep breaths, go and find a quiet space just to clear your head, or integrate in your routine something that's really, that you finish that activity better than what you do when you started. But there's a really fine line there, isn't there, between working really hard and then overworking and doing more than you probably need to. So what have you found as sort of warning signs before you get to that point where you've gone too far?
Yeah. And trust me, the goal is not for me to talk the whole hour here. But I'll tell a story that I think everybody on this call can definitely relate to. And it's something I went through when I was head coaching at Wake Forest, that when you're at places with a lot of resources, it can drive you crazy. And again, the expectations go up, and the demand on yourself of, as you mentioned, you've got administrators and other people that are pressing on you all the time. But this is an easy thing, especially for the athletic trainers to relate to, but just let me take you through a day on the road. Here we are, we travel, and we get to our location or our destination, and we might have a quick, for basketball, they might do a shoot around. For volleyball, we'll go serve and pass, they call it. We might have a short practice. We go eat, we get back to the hotel. It's starting to wind down. It's maybe 10ish at night or so. Maybe I'll meet with my staff so we can get organized for the match tomorrow, and do another prep for video for the next day. And so it's 11ish, and I'm in bed, and I didn't have cable, so now I got cable, and I'm watching ESPN, and my brain's going. I got my computer, and we have access to video for volleyball. They have a really neat service, just like basketball and everybody else, that you can watch everybody in the conference 2,000 times, and certain players and all of this. That's coded out. And I start watching, and I'd already, mentally, and I already had prepared. We already had a scouting report. We're ready to go. But, I'm like, well, why don't I watch another match? I've only watched the last 2 matches. So, I watch maybe a third match, and, we'll watch one more. I'll watch a 4th match. And next thing I know, it's about, 1:32 in the morning, and I'm going, all right, I'm grinding, baby. I'm burning the candle. I'm getting prepared. And I walk down for breakfast in the morning at 7 a.m. Or 7:30, whatever it is. And, I'm going on now 5 hours-ish sleep, and I'm really big on saying hello in the morning. It's something that I think is really important. It's kind of awkward, especially for kids, but I tell them ahead of time, hey, listen, I'm going to greet you every day I see you. It's just it's how I want to be treated. It doesn't mean that's how you want to be treated, but I'm going to say hello to you. So, I start, hey, good morning. Hey, happy Saturday. Hey, blah, blah. And I'm getting, a very lukewarm response, because, half of them are still half asleep. And I'm starting to get irritated. And so we finish breakfast. We get on the bus because we're going to go do our pregame or whatever. And, kid does something that, it's starting to set me off really and pretty irritable. We go back to the hotel. We do our film session for obviously the game that night. And, kids are probably not paying attention or aren't on it as much as I need them to be. And so I'm getting irritable again. Then we have a pregame meal, and then we go to the locker room. We review the scout again, and not everybody knows who the hitters are and what's going on. And this is awesome because now I'm really irritable, and it's an hour before the game. And now it's 7 p.m. It's showtime, and I'm supposed to be my best right now because it's game time. It's 7 p.m. And I noticed that I'm probably at my worst. I'm on a couple hours sleep. I was kind of a jerk all day to everybody that I interacted with because I was so short with them. And this cycle goes on, for 4 months that you're just burning on fumes. And it took me some time to really, think about, like, Ken, you're your worst probably when you need to be your best. When it matters, when the team needs you to be positive and encouraging and all of these, check marks that we can make for good coaches, you're not any of those when it matters. And I think that's something that, every coach can relate to. And it really made me self-reflect about what am I going to do to be the best I can be at 7 p.m. And it's, something I've thought about, this whole grinding out. We've always heard, I'm going to outwork everybody. I'm going to outwork them. Well, there is, in my opinion, a point of diminishing returns that every coach hits. And it's different for everybody, right? Some coaches, I'm sure they can go on, 5 hours of sleep and, like my wife, drink a ton of coffee and somehow get through it. But I realized that I'm going to figure out how to be more effective and more efficient with my time. And that's trial and error. It's different for everybody. Can I lean on an assistant coach more? Can I, what we did at San Diego State, for example, that I had to talk the head coach into, the players doing some of the film and the scout. We set up sheets for them to watch and do things. And again, not that we're not involved, but can we just work smarter? And again, I would just, strongly encourage, you need to be your best when the lights go on. And the kids can sense the anxiety and the shortness and the tension. And I've learned, hey, some green tea and, a better night's sleep is probably better for me and my team than me being up all night and feeling like I know every single thing that's scouted. But, I know your initial question was, what can we do? I made sure that I had time during that day, for example, of a game day for myself. And that I think spoke volumes. It maybe meant I wasn't as prepared as I wanted to be. But again, I think I can get more out of people if they feel like, hey, he's in a great mood, he's positive, he's this, he's that. And that's better than me, staying up later and maybe not knowing every rotation or every kid as well as I should.
What about and I'm curious, do a quick poll. If you have an hour, what do? Do you sleep or do you do a workout? What do people think? Let's see. How many sleepers are out there? How many exercise fiends are out there? What's your response to that one, Ken? What do you do with that hour? Do you sleep or do you do a workout?
I'd probably be scared if I went to sleep. I'd miss the match.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I really got into. If we stayed at hotels that had a pool, and I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up in Chicago and we never got to go in them because it was always cold. But I really enjoyed, going and hitting the pool and even just walking in the pool or doing some kind of stupid workout because I learned when you displace water, it's a heck of a workout. And as I've gotten older, it's a lot easier on my joints. But I felt like, hitting the pool would probably have happened. And if they had a hot tub, And then I'd go up and shower and have some green tea. And, I think I'd be in a really good state of mind for the group when I see them.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. I love the fence sitter approach. Do a little bit of both. I hope you do the sleep and then the workout, and not do the workout and then try and sleep. I probably would go with you on that one, the sleep first. Definitely hard to sleep when you're on site at a regatta, even if it's, particularly strange times of the day. And thanks for that one, Tim. I guess it depends on the time of the day as well, but maybe we can segue. You mentioned a little bit about the routine that you guys are following now, and trying to use technology, but what are some of the tips you've got, and what did you see in the research there, Ken, in terms of routines and what resources are out there for people to sort of touch on to get an idea of other things they can do?
Yeah, and I think before I share that, I'd be really interested, if you don't mind, if we can just ask the people that are on what they currently do to try, what strategies have they found that help them, de-stress or deal with their stress, and maybe they can throw a couple in there, and then I'll give an idea of kind of what my research found, and maybe that can lead us into that if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So just any strategies, anything that you find is helpful to de-stress. I know we had someone had mentioned they've got the athletic department uses one of the meditation apps, Headspace, as an app for all athletes. The employees is a great resource. Thanks for that one, Logan. Yeah, for sure. I know I've used that one myself. Lots of cool guided meditations, and different just mindfulness practices. That's a great one.
Yeah, and it's funny, Sergio mentions working out. So my research was with Division I head women's volleyball coaches, and I was very fortunate to have that AVCA kind of sponsor it, or send it out for me. And we had over 1/3 of a response, which was awesome. It's higher than normal of what people would get. And the number one thing that came back that helped head women's volleyball coaches was exactly what Sergio mentioned there, was physical activity. That they felt like that really helped them be able to de-stress. Closely followed by organizing or communicating, either with their athletes or with their administration or with their support staff. And then the third one was just getting time away. So just figuring out how in the world they can just unplug completely, kind of like, I'm assuming, for me, that would be that hour of yoga, where I really can't be affected by anything other than sweat in my eyes and being way too hot and uncomfortable in the situation. So that's what, I had found. And I'm sure, I kind of had thought, at least in my recruiting adventures, I had felt like a lot of coaches leaned on alcohol or some other things. And maybe because the survey went through the universities, maybe people were scared to be completely transparent with, what they were using, because I kind of joked myself when alcohol came in my research. It was only cited, like, literally, I think it was only like 8 people mentioned it. And it wasn't number 1, it was like number 3. And I'm like, come on, man, are you guys kidding me? I watch you. I see you on the road every freaking weekend, so, or you're asking me after the match to go get a beer. I mean, come on. So, but I guess they didn't feel like that was a worthwhile strategy to list. So, yeah, so I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, and prioritization, as Justin mentions, is clearly a critical one, where you sort of feel overwhelmed. It's endless, isn't it? Whether it's answering emails, it's studying the opposition, it's the end is only as, the end of the string is as I think people say, coaching is like, there's how much air is there in the room, it just depends on the size of the room. And in that respect, you just got to take one deep breath and then off you go again. But but probably the one I hear that challenges people the most is time management. How do you really hold the discipline to, I've allocated an hour. How do you know you've only got an hour's worth of work and not try and jam 2 hours into one, or you underestimate and things come up, and things inevitably unravel. And I know, to the athletic directors and the administrators out there, that timing and management of, you've got to factor in when things are going to go wrong. And that seems to be more the case now than ever before. There's the unexpected phone call from a parent or whoever. So what are your responses to that one on in terms of time management?
Yeah. And it's funny, I have my binder here, and, this is something that, I don't know if you can see that. It's not showing it on my end.
No, it's invisible. You go straight to the lake.
Yeah.
I wish my binder did that.
my virtual background is failing me.
No, that's good. That's the perfect angle right there. Yeah.
But this is something that I've always shared with every group I've coached, and it's just the day broken up from 5:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. by 30-minute segments, and I've always challenged them to figure out how much schoolwork are you doing, how much Facebooking are you doing, how much, and I really think it's something that we need to do. My wife even said, today, she said, hey, you took a recruiting call last night, and while we were having dinner, and and it's something that I didn't really think about much, but when she said it today, I'm going, yeah, that I didn't need to do that. That kid, I could have easily talked to today. Why am I compromising a dinner time on a Sunday? And to your point, unfortunately, we're wired that you can work 24 hours. I mean, even something you mentioned about if you're recruiting internationally, the time changes, and I'm currently recruiting a kid in New Zealand, and to have a 19-hour, luckily that's not that bad. But a European kid who's 6 or 9 or 12, I mean, you can do it all the time. And again, to me, it just comes down to making that schedule and holding yourself just like you would an athlete to your own standard. An example that comes to mind, I teach a class online, and this women's basketball coach, collegiate basketball coach, is in this program, and about, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, I said, hey, we're winding down here. It's coming crunch time, and you're not going to pass. Your assignments aren't done, and what you have turned in, I've sent some of the stuff back to you, and discussion posts, you're not engaging people. And it was really interesting because I was looking forward to the opportunity to talk to her exactly how I think that she probably would interact with her athletes, and go, hey, listen, let's just put it on the ground right now. Okay. If your athlete was giving you the effort that you're giving me in this class, would she ever play? No. Okay. And just start talking to her like an athlete. And, to me, I think we need to hold ourselves to that same standard. That, hey, I am going to make time for myself because it is important. And I need this. I need this to function, and hopefully at an even higher level. And when you take care of yourself, again, to my point of diminishing returns, how do I problem solve and become more effective and more efficient with my time, so I can have more time for myself and do things that I enjoy and love, and puts me in a better place to be better with the people that I interact with, because we are in the service industry. It's one thing my research had found out, or what I found, I was like, service industry, but we are. I mean, we're just like a waiter or a waitress or a nurse or a teacher or an athletic trainer, we're dealing with people. We're not dealing with computers. And there is such a huge element of that. This can be researched, out the wazoo, of how many people have been very successful coaching or in any discipline, and they either never played it, or they weren't a professional, or but they knew people and they figured out how to relate to people. And, you know, I think that, again, managing your time so you're in a good place to be able to do those things is absolutely critical to have some success.
Yeah, one of the even more recent research articles that I just stumbled across was looking at personality traits, and those that sort of had that tendency to be more, you know, what they call in the research, more neurotic, you know, have higher levels of anxiety, have a higher, you know, there's a higher likelihood of leading to burnout, but it also is somewhat linked to conscientiousness, you know, that really detail oriented individual. And I'm just curious, you know, if you've come across that or you've got any thoughts on it, because I thought, you know, just as this research has been talked about for a long time, and you mentioned Brent, you know, I've known Brent for a bunch of years, and he's a real pioneer in terms of thinking about coaching, and whether it's working remotely or how you balance, you know, the science with the art of coaching. But do you have any thoughts on that in terms of, you know, developing that sense of self-awareness? Where do you fit on these different types of scales, whether it's Myers-Briggs or DISC or, you know, whatever, but expanding your self-awareness to know, well, okay, how does that link to burnout?
And it's funny you bring up Brent, because he's a behaviorist. I mean, he you know, strongly believed in the personality traits, I'm sure. And I've done it with teams. You know, I've done the DISC with teams. And the first time we did it, it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating that you could answer some questions, and then they could make, you know, inferences about maybe how you want to be talked to, or how you're going to respond in certain situations. And there are some programs in volleyball, you know, that have committed to this every single year. You know, there's a gentleman down in Australia that's making a living out of doing this. And he's a, you know, ex-Olympic swimmer. And, you know, he's done, I mean, and a lot of people use him because, again, I think coaches, if we can get more information on what makes you tick, and how you want to be spoken to, and what wiring, the hard wiring you have versus we're all different. We do have some common threads that, and we're going to gravitate differently to different people, as the research shows. And we're going to have some conflict with some different people. I think it's incredibly impactful. And it shocks me that there hasn't been more done with it. And as people continue to try to find new ways to continue to elevate or push the envelope, I do think it's an area, you know, that will get more and more interest.
Yeah, I think particularly right now, given that we're all in this forced isolation, you know, some of us love to be on our own. You know, some of us get charged up by being on our own, and you know, there's a lot of literature on that. And then there's others that thrive for connection. They thrive to, you know, they are energized being around other people. And going back to some of your early comments, you know, where you're looking at some of the athletes, those that are sort of, you know, they're on it, they're responding to every email, every Zoom call, every text message, every workout, they're on it, they're interacting with you. Sometimes that we perceive as being, well, that athlete's on it. And so therefore those athletes that are interacting are on it. Therefore those that aren't are not. And how just even our perceptions of our athletes, and then for those administrators that are working with coaches, how we all process this time. For me, you know, that's why we're doing this. You know, we're trying to provide an opportunity just to connect with coaches, administrators, people that are looking for, you know, whatever it is. It's the silver bullet. I don't know if there's anything quite out there, because as you say, it's not a one size fits all. But you know, as we sort of come to the end here, any last sort of comments or ideas that can sort of stretch people to think about this idea of wellness on a different level?
Yeah, a couple things. You know, you brought up something I like to call the human factor, that, you know, to me is immeasurable, but it's real, and we all deal with it. And how do we get better at it? And, you know, it made me think of, as I'm trying to maybe provide some insight, you know, the stigma that's around the words, for example, burnout, mental health, stress, exhaustion. You know, that to me is, it has a negative connotation, and that's an issue. that's an issue. And to me, in my experience, it's why people don't want to get help. They don't want to ask. They don't want to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room. And even using the word, like coaching wellness, like that has a much more pleasant tone to it. It could be, to me, not just mental, it could be physical. In a presentation I did, I showed, unfortunately, videos, of some people having heart attacks and coaches fainting, and it does have a physiological response on you, which is not positive typically. So I think the biggest message that I can hopefully have everybody just leave with is, what are you going to do to take time for yourself, and what makes you tick, and you want to be as the best you can be, and you have to be at your best because you're in a position of leadership. And I don't think you're selling yourself short if you're trying to burn the candle at both ends. And as you mentioned, everybody's balance is somewhere, but that work-life balance, which has been in the literature a lot, that's a real thing. And I've had coaches tell me, yeah, but I love doing it, so it's not really work to me. And I get it. That's why we're all in this profession, because we're passionate about it. We're in when I recruit players, I talk about to parents that, I'm in the 1%. I get to wake up and do something that I love doing. I'm in the 1%. How many friends do you have? And you may even be in this category that you do your job because you have to. You have to pay a mortgage. You have kids to feed. And I think you got to be careful with that passion, because at some point, and everybody's different, you have to unplug and recharge your batteries, because if not, you're just running on such a low zone that, to me, you're not being efficient or effective with your time.
Awesome. I think one of the things that comes to mind with that as well is just that little bit of outreach, whether it's to how many times we fail to say thanks to the people that got us into coaching. That's one thing that comes to mind as you just mentioned it. And the other is, I think there's a lot of young coaches out there that are really struggling with whether they stay in coaching. So is this an opportunity for us to tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, have you ever thought about coaching like someone did to us at some point? Because that I think the many coaches that I get to work with, that energizes all of us to know that we could actually be inspiring the next generation of coaches. So I know Kelly just referenced an audio version of an article that she was listening to. Looks like it's from the Harvard Business Review, maybe. Not quite on wellness, but a topic that may be worth sharing relating to trust and leadership. So Kelly, thanks for sharing that one. And so yeah, any other questions or comments from folks as we aim just to wrap up in a minute or two. I'm one that should try not to book a meeting to the top of the next hour, because I know most of us have something to go to next. So if there aren't any other questions or comments.
One quick thing that you just brought up that I thought is awesome is, typically we've discovered in research that we'll coach, or at least initially when we get into it, the way we were coached. That's proven. And, unfortunately, that model is outdated, especially the older we get, that distance gets bigger. And it's something that I think has really challenged me and I think a lot of other coaches, that they continue to change with the times and their philosophy continues to change. And that's something that, I think if I was a younger coach, that I wish somebody would have told me that, hey, just because this is the way you were taught it doesn't mean it's the most effective way now. And I think that would have been really helpful for me to know.
Yeah, no, that's superb. Well, Ken, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time, and everyone online. It's always great to, we're passionate about coaching, and I know that's what's kept everyone on the line, because you've got millions of things to be doing. And so, Ken, just on behalf of everyone on the line, thank you for joining us. And to everyone online, we do have a stack more of these coming up. And I know someone mentioned not to open a can of worms, but there was a really good question that we sort of touched on in terms of mentoring, but getting more women into coaching. That's one in store. And I know Sarah will talk about that next Monday at noon Eastern, and Caleb is certainly in a male-dominated sport there in baseball, but we've got a whole bunch of webinars